Okay, all right, so welcome. This is our Let's Remodel talk about, really it's about making the case for two very healthy habits that lower your risk of cancer. And one of those habits is a physical practice, and one of those habits is a contemplative practice. So my name is Lorien, and I'm going to be chatting with you tonight. And I am a certified yoga therapist. I have training in Qigong, as well as I'm a certified cancer exercise, what's the acronym? Cancer exercise therapist specialist or something like that. I can't remember the acronym, but I've been trained in cancer exercise as well. And I've been working with people with cancer for about 11 years now. And before I taught yoga, I was an engineer. I was a mechanical engineer for Lockheed Martin for 9 years. So I have a science background. And then before that, I have a physical fitness background. I was a aerobics instructor, personal trainer. And then way back, I was a dancer. And what I see when I look at that whole spectrum that brings me to this moment is that I kind of go back and forth between the body and the mind. I've done that throughout my whole life. I would do something very physical, and then I would feel like my brain wasn't getting enough juice. And so then I would step back from the physical and do something a little more mental. And when I discovered yoga, I really stepped into a practice because I wanted to do something healthy with a good friend of mine. And I stuck with it, even though she didn't stick with it. I stuck with it because I found it to be just really beneficial to the chronic pain that I live with for most of my life. So it became a little more than a physical practice at some point. I started using it as a way to manage some of the stress in my life. And eventually I decided I didn't want to be an engineer anymore. That was too much mind, not enough body. And this yoga thing really was a beautiful kind of blend of the, stimulating the mind as well as stimulating the body. And when I started to dive deep into the why was this so stimulating and helpful for both the body and the mind, I really started to learn a little more about the physiology of the body. So when I use that term remodel, what I mean is that at any given moment, our body is remodeling, literally remodeling, laying down new layers of bone, of muscle, of the little lining around the brain synapses. All of this stuff is dissolving and growing, is dissolving and growing. It's just constantly replenishing itself. And the body grows where it needs. It's a very efficient tool. So it grows and sends resources where it needs to. So when you stress a part of the body over and over and over, the physiology of the body is such that the intelligence of the body is such that it will develop more strength to handle that stress on that part of the body. This is the science behind weight training, exercise, really anything that we do. When I was a dancer, I would repeatedly do these same movements over and over and over again to train my body, because every time I did that movement, I put a certain amount of stress or a certain functional stress on that part of the body. And then my body learned and said, okay, I need to build up more muscle here, build up more flexibility here, or something. So we also see how this can be used against us on what we call repetitive strain injuries. You know, if you repeatedly, like we see it a lot in people who use a mouse a lot, you repeatedly hold the hand in this awkward position. And so there's this repeated force, repeated stress on a certain area. And if we don't have the opportunity to build up the strength to manage that stress, then we start to feel discomfort there. So we really want the remodeling, the habits that the body has, the habits that the mind has. We want to channel that ability into something positive. And all of my research that I've done in looking at yoga and cancer, meditation and cancer, breathing and cancer, I've looked at a lot of stuff. Really, it kind of comes down to these two groups, this contemplative practice and this physical practice. Each of these individually help lower our risk of a cancer diagnosis or a recurrence. And then what I decided on my own was, hey, if I combine the two, I'm not going to get, you know, a better risk factor, but I just find that that's more efficient in my life, is to have something that is physical, but also contemplative. And it goes back to me not wanting to be too much in the body or too much in the mind. I want things to be kind of combined. So what do I mean by a contemplative practice? This is any type of practice where you give yourself those moments to reflect on what you're feeling, and even reflect on what you're feeling about what you're feeling. So that could be an exercise class. That could be a movement practice, a Qigong or a Tai Chi or a yoga, or a dance class even. I mean, it's very all-encompassing. It could be a more classical meditation practice where you sit down on a cushion and you give yourself a certain amount of time to really be quiet and still. But all of these contemplative practices have a few things in common. They help to manage your stress, and stress has such a cascade of effects in the body. And like I said, you know, we need stress, we need functional stress to help us to learn where to remodel, where to address certain things. If we didn't have stress, we wouldn't be walking upright. We needed stress to get us to learn how to hold ourselves upright. But when that stress becomes chronic, when there isn't an opportunity to go in the other direction, to relax and counter the stress, or in my example of the repetitive strain injury, right? So there's no opposite motion happening. Then that's when we're doing that remodeling, but in the negative way, or the way that is harmful to us. So we really want to have some counterbalances to this chronic stress, and contemplative practices do help to manage that stress response. Another, a little more scientific or a little more kind of out there research is being done on something called telomeres. And telomeres are the very ends of your chromosome chain. They're a little bit like a plastic tip at the end of a shoelace. And if that plastic tip goes away, then the strands of your shoelace are more likely to unravel. Well, your telomeres, over time, every time you copy your chromosomes, they start to change in length. And what researchers have found is that there's a correlation between telomere length, shortened telomere length, and certain genetic issues like cancer. So that really what we want, if we're going to age gracefully and live without illness, is to keep those telomeres, to maintain the length of those telomeres as best we can. And meditation, mindfulness practices have, there's something to them that helps us to maintain that telomere length. So even on a genetic level, when we do these regular mindfulness practice, and it needs to be regular for it to affect us on the genetic level, but it really has a positive benefit. It's pretty powerful. Another benefit of a regular practice is that it helps with hormone levels, and especially hormone levels that are associated with stress. So one of the things that I have dealt with a lot in my life is insomnia. And a practice that I'm going to be sharing with you later in this talk is the practice that I use, that I found that just really sets me up, 9 times out of 10, sets me up for a really good night's sleep. And the reason why is because it helps to balance out the hormone called melatonin. And that is a hormone associated with deeper sleep. So I find doing a meditation, or it's not really even a meditation, it's just a kind of a pre-meditation mindfulness practice. I do it right before I go to sleep at night, and I just find that to set myself up to close out the day and you know, come into sleep in a really, really lovely way. And then another benefit of the contemplative practice is kind of humorous. A friend of mine said that, you know, called meditation a gateway drug to mindful choices. It once you are in the practice of noticing, and then noticing what you notice about noticing, you know, you start to really kind of get deeper and deeper into this, then it starts to bleed over into your choices about your food, or what you're, you know, watching or listening to, or how you speak to others. You know, some of these practices really turn the inquiry inward. So then you start to understand who you are and really get to know your habits in the mind and in your emotions. And sometimes these habits are things that we're not so happy with. And so it starts to affect changes in the rest of your life. And this is why my friend jokes that it's a gateway drug, that it kind of ruins you in certain ways. So that's half of what I wanted to talk about, is just that contemplative practice. I think it is so powerful, even if you are not physically active right now. You know, maybe you're healing up from some treatments, or you've got cycles of treatment that really take you physically low, or you've got moments where there's this pain that's really limiting the physical activity that you can do. if you've still got your mind, you can still practice these contemplative exercises, and that can be really beneficial too. And then the second part of what I wanted to talk about is the physical practice. And a lot of times people will come to a yoga class thinking that it's going to be very physically demanding, because this is sort of the culture that we have built here in the US. But yoga and Qigong and Tai Chi can also be very adaptable to milder physical activity as well. Now, what we have seen, what the research shows, is that there is some link between an increase in your physical activity and a decrease in the risk of certain cancers. And there are some cancers that tend to behave a little better than others. What the National Cancer Institute recommends is a minimum of 2.5 hours a week of some moderate physical activity. That could go up to even 5 hours a week. And it was one of the reasons why we chose to offer 6 mind-body classes a week, because we wanted to give you all the opportunity to meet that suggestion. So what does moderate activity mean? So the way they're defining moderate activity is an activity when performed that is allows you to talk, but is vigorous enough so that you are not able to comfortably sing while you're doing it. So no singing while doing this moderate activity. So an example of that would be a yoga practice, a Qigong practice, a Tai Chi practice, would be walking or mowing your lawn. Although it's so hot here in Florida, I don't know that you would really be out there mowing your lawn unless it was a cool, cool day. Now, vigorous activity, if you are engaging in vigorous activity like running, jogging, fast biking, swimming, then the recommendation is less than 2 hours a week. It's anywhere from 1:15 to like 1:45 a week. Not that you don't have to do more, but that's the minimum recommendation from the National Cancer Institute. So this physical activity really affects us on a lot of levels. There is, obviously there's the physical body. So the bones get some good stress, the muscles get some good stress so that they can remodel in an appropriate way. We're also supporting the immune system by moving our arms and our legs. We get to rinse the body of waste and circulate the lymph through the body. So that's all really good for our immune response. And our immune response is very much a part of how we manage cancer cells. So rogue cancer cells are forming all the time in our bodies, and most of the time our immune system shuts them down. And it's only when we get those clumps of cancer cells that it starts to form something more serious. So if we can keep our immune systems supported, then that goes a long way towards managing those rogue cancer cells. There's also another hormonal response to exercise, really affects the endocrine system, affects the stress hormones, affects melatonin. All of that comes into play when you get some regular physical activity. And the heart, really good for moving blood throughout the whole body. So good to get the heart pumping a little bit. So these are all excellent reasons for you to create some healthy habits of contemplative practice and a physical practice. And I think now I'd like to move into an actual little mini practice. We're just going to do a couple of things, but I'll just pause for a moment in case anybody has any questions.
I have a question, or just sort of a comment, Lorien. I've also taken a nutrition class that talked about adipose tissue, and that there's some evidence that adipose tissue is related to cancer, like cancer cells they like adipose tissue, right? I guess there's a correlation there. And I've noticed that I've gained weight. I would love to blame it all on chemo, but I do think it's also behavioral changes and me that oh, I'm going to have the ice cream because I got to take my chemo pills and I don't want to upset stomach. So why not ice cream? And like, right, more fatty foods or things like that. So I think part of it's psychological. And then the other thing too is I have a work day, and I still feel like in my cancer treatment that I'm beholden to a workday schedule, a medical appointment schedule, a pill schedule, right? I have teenagers and they've got activities, and I'm being pulled more into like fitting in meditation or exercise around all these other activities. So my question to you is do you have any tips or suggestions on like how to get, because intellectually, like I understand all this, right? It's so important. If I'm not healthy, I'm not going to be around, or, I'm not going to be able to work and do these other things. But it's just the discipline or the way to get organized to say these are flexible enough, right? That they don't have to be so rigid that if it's like, oh, I missed my 7 o'clock meditation, oh, well, I'm going to skip it today, right? But how do people adjust to this sort of lifestyle change that is so significantly different, than going through treatment where it's, recovering from surgery, I'm laying on the couch because that's all I can really do. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, I can speak from my own perspective, and I have not gone through cancer treatment. So just laying that out there. But what I've noticed is the thing that I do first thing in the morning is usually the thing that I value the most. So if I sit up in bed and I'm going to give you some really teeny tiny little bite-size practices. So if you sit up in the morning and you do 20 breaths of your contemplative practice, and that's it, that's all you do. And that should take you about 5-10 minutes. And then you get on with your day. That is planting a seed where you will start to make a little more space in your day over time. But I really find, at least for me, that it's got to be the first thing I do in the morning or the last thing I do at night. In between, there's just too many things pulling on you, especially if you've still got children in the house. My kids are grown and they live on the other coast, so I don't really have to worry about that. But there's other things in my house, and even those get in the way. And then yes, you do have all of these, you've got your day, you've got your workload, and you've got your doctor's appointments, and you've got your kids' appointments, and all of these other things. So my advice would be to, try to do 5-10 minutes before you even get out of bed, or 5-10 minutes at the end of the day before you go to sleep, and start there. And I love this, the way my Qigong teacher recommends bringing these things into your life and creating them a habit is he likes visuals, and he said it's a dripping dripping faucet. That's how it gets into your life. It's just a drip. It's not, you're not turning the whole spigot and getting a rush all at once, because that's not sustainable. It's just a little drip. And then eventually that little drip will become a little bit more and a little bit more. But it's hard. It's not easy. And
Yeah, no, that's helpful because I think first thing in the morning and last thing at night is easier to fit in. And I'm glad you talked about first thing in the morning, because if I think about it, it's checking my work mail. Like that's the most important before I drink before I drink water or do anything, I'm checking work emails, right? So that's sending a message to my body. It's a negative feeling because it's obligation.
yeah,
It's ignoring my body, right? It's ignoring eating and reflecting and all of that. So I think you're right that it doesn't cost anything, right? Like letting email wait for a while doesn't,
right.
there's no bad consequence to that. So um I think you're right about that. And I do think too, in my experience, when I exercise and when I eat right, it does feed on itself, right? Like there's a positive feeling with that. So it's like
Yep.
when I was walking every day, it was like I missed it when I didn't walk that day. I felt sluggish. So it was like, no, I want it to be out of the positive, not the checklist of I should be drinking water and I should be exercising and I should be eating fruits and vegetables and I should be getting 8 hours of sleep a night, right? It's like, oh, when it's a task list, it's just too much. But if it's,
Yeah.
oh, I get a positive feeling when I take the walk, or I feel so much better when I eat, Brussels sprouts once a week, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's out of the positive rather than the, obligation. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for the question. And that's really, I think my hat's off to you. I'm impressed that, you're even here asking about it. It's wonderful that you want to do this, And then the
Yeah.
other thing that I'll say about that, that in my 20 years of doing this is, it's we have cycles. We all have cycles. We have cycles where, we're going along and we're doing the thing that we know that is good for us. And then something happens and we slip and things go a different way for a while. And then we get back into the cycle. And the important thing is to watch the mental habits and patterns when you realize that you have stopped doing the positive thing, right? Because the beating yourself up doesn't help. So just get back to doing the positive thing and see if you can let go of any judgment, any self-judgment.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Not feeling guilty. Because
Yeah.
I think what happens then is like, well, I'll just continue on not doing it because, I didn't do it for a week. So why start now? But I think too, the other thing is, you said you were a dancer. I was a dancer when I was younger. My sister's a mechanical engineer. I'm not. So I could relate to sort of your background. But if I tap into when I was younger and healthier, like when I was thin and, more athletic and all of that, I even think back to my eating patterns. And I think mentally I say to myself, just go back to the way I was, like go back to but it's such a big leap to go back to when I was 25, now I'm 50, right? And it's like, but I did it before. Why can't I just be 25 again and have those same positive patterns? But it's like, but it's been a long time. It's 25 years of working too hard and
Remodeling.
yeah, right. Having kids and putting myself second or
Yeah.
third or fourth, we're taking care of my grandmother. And I mean, that sounds like an excuse. I mean, I did it. I'm accountable to it. I made the choice to do those things. But I think it's that mindset of I've got to shift it back to me. I got to shift it back to, I did it before, but don't beat myself up that I just can't like instantly go back to my 25-year-old lifestyle, which was much more active and, didn't eat so much and didn't have the aches and pains like I do now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does any of that make sense or?
Absolutely. Yeah. And chasing the ghost of our past it's really can be very disheartening and damaging. So yeah, just see if you can let yourself off the hook with that one too. And instead you're just finding a new version of those healthy habits with who you are now, because you would not want to go back to your 25-year-old self in other ways, I'm sure, you
Oh,
know.
right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, I've gained a lot, right, of wisdom and experience. And I
Yeah.
think too, there's this meditation I did that talked about your blueprint of your body, right? That your body knows, when you were talking about earlier on about, the physical, demands that you put on your body and how your body responds, right? It builds muscle, it builds bone. And it made me think about, right, like my body has a blueprint to know how to be healthy, right? It knows how to attack cancer. It knows how to be healthy again. So I try to think of that as like, how am I helping my body do that, right? Is eating ice cream or sitting on the couch helping that blueprint, helping those miracles, or is it just making it that much harder? So I try to
Mhm.
psychologically sort of like look at the why, right? Like, why should I be doing these things other than it's the right thing to do? It's like help my body help itself rather than making it harder. Right? It doesn't make any logical sense.
Well, it kind of does actually. If you take a step back and look at your habits and your needs and your wants. So there is something in your needs and your wants that is calling out for comfort, right? Because the ice cream is
Yes.
comfort and the sitting on the couch is the comfort. So there is something that you are reaching for that is, some kind of comfort food or sweetness or soothing quality, nurturing quality. And if we don't get it in one area of our life, we're going to reach for it in another area of our lives. So if we don't get it through walking and hygiene and really taking care of ourselves, nurturing ourselves that way, then we're going to reach for these other things because we just need that comfort. So it kind of makes sense that's where you're going towards. So I would not necessarily discourage you from wanting that comfort. Just kind of rechannel it every now and then to something different that is a little more sustainable. That is feeding the miracle, right?
Right. Yeah, right. The miracle being that things happen that we can't explain, right? But we know they happen. Like you get a
And
cut on your hand, it heals, right? But I didn't think about it healing. I didn't tell my body to heal that
right,
cut, but it
right.
happened, right? It's sort of like a miracle that the body knows what to do.
Yeah. That remodeling that is always trying to find the best version of you that it can. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. This is very helpful.
Oh, good.
Um,
Good. I'm glad.
yeah.
Okay. Well, should we do a little bit of moving? I hopefully nobody's just eaten a big meal.
I'm
Are
not eating anything, no.
okay. Hopefully you haven't just eaten something because I want to shake you up a little bit. And if you've got a lot of food in your stomach, this might get a little bit uncomfortable. So if you are munching while we're talking or you just finished eating, then I would recommend maybe just watching this and doing it with me later. But you can absolutely do the non-physical parts of it. If you've got a full stomach, the non-physical parts would work just fine. Okay, so we're just gonna do maybe we'll do two things. We're just gonna do two things. All right, so the first thing is from a Qigong practice, and I chose it because it always brings a smile to my face. And one of the things that I struggle with in my own habits of being physical is it's not fun. It's especially, you know, if I'm going to walk around here in Florida, it's going to be hot. There's going to be bugs. I mean, these are the stories I tell myself that keep me from getting out the door. I'm going to be hot. I'm going to have to take a shower. There's going to be bugs that get me, and then I'll have a bug bite for 2 weeks. And, you know, all of this stuff, all these stories that go on. So I'm very motivated by fun. If something is fun, if I know, if I'm guaranteed to feel better when I'm done with it, I'm going to more likely do that over and over again than something that I know is good for me, but, you know, it's not so fun. So I chose this to share with you because it is my go-to fun little movement. It gets the heart going a little bit. It shakes up all you know, it circulates all your blood and your lymph and your chi. And I find it really fun. It's called shivering horse. So think about a horse, and horses are very, even though they're big, huge creatures, they are really in tuned with the sensation across their skin. So a fly can land on the backside of a horse and it'll do this little shiver, this little movement, and basically knock the fly off just by doing this tiny little movement in one part of their huge bodies. So that's the naming behind this exercise. And it's a standing up exercise. So if you're going to join me, you're going to find a place to stand. Okay, hopefully you can see me. And you're just going to start by shaking the wrists around. So this isn't the fun part. This is just the beginning part. So you shake the wrists in such a way that the fingers are really relaxed. Okay. And this whole practice is a sequence of kind of relaxing and tensing in different parts of the body. So we start with the wrists, and now see if you can shake the elbows a little bit. I know, it's goofy, right? It makes you laugh. And then can you shake the shoulders? You might notice that the breath will start to go quickly back and forth, back and forth. Okay, so that's a little bit strange. And then bend the knees and just start to shake the hips. Yeah, shaking the hips a little bit. And then shake the knees and the ankles. They'll go. Okay, so notice that we kind of went down a sequence from the wrist down to the ankles. And let's do that again. So wrists, elbows, shoulders, hips, knees, ankles. Wrists, elbows, shoulders, hips, knees, ankles. Wrists, elbows, shoulders, hips, knees, ankles. And then continue. And as you do this, think about like the horse flicking the fly off of it. What do you want to let go of? Is it a negative thought? Is it heat or coldness? What is it that you want to let go of? Maybe there's some icky tension in your body. Do this one more time. And then pause. And just take a moment to feel the heart beating, your breath flowing in and out. Maybe you feel circulation through your hands, through other parts of your body. So just pause. This is the contemplative part. Pause and scan through your body, noticing the effects of that practice. Notice any sense of lightness, of joy, levity. If I'm reading the news and I get very negative about what's going on in the world, you know, I'll come into my practice room and I'll do a few rounds of that just to kind of shake it off. Not that I don't want to acknowledge something, right? I'm not looking to deny what's actually happening in the world, but just so that it doesn't stick in me and bring me down for the rest of the day. Okay. So that is something you can do throughout your day. I highly recommend it if you are somebody that sits at a desk for a large portion of time. I would recommend, you know, at least once a day, get up and do that. The idea is to move things throughout your body. It could be your blood, it could be your lymph, it could be your tension, it could be your negative thoughts. Get them to drain out of the body, leave you feeling lighter. Okay, now we're going to come back to sitting. And this is the practice that I promised you. This is a breathing kind of pre-meditation practice that I do at night before I go to sleep. But you could also do it first thing in the morning. Sometimes I do it both at night and in the morning. So this breathing practice is 20 breaths. And the first section of it, you'll be counting the breaths like this. Inhale 21, exhale 20. Inhale 19, exhale 18. Like that. So each time you breathe in and you breathe out, you count. And eventually, you start to settle in your body and you start to relax in your body. And then what will happen is your mind will go off to some other thought or sensation, and then you'll realize, oh, I stopped counting. What number am I on? Whatever the last number you were counting, bring your attention back to that number and start again. So that is the first half of this practice. 20 breaths. Inhale 21, exhale 20, inhale 19, exhale 18. All the way. It doesn't matter if you get to 0. All right, so whenever you're ready, you'll begin. And at some point, I'm going to strike this bowl. And then I'll talk you through the second half of the exercise. So you can do this with eyes opened or closed. Just let your body be relaxed. Breath is normal, organic breathing. Begin whenever you're ready. Inhaling 21, exhaling 20. When your mind wanders, bring it back to the last number you remember counting. So whether you have reached 0 or not, just let go of that part of the practice. And now we will shift so that we're just counting on the exhale. So inhaling, exhaling 20, inhaling, exhaling 19, and continue your own pace, bringing your attention back to the last number you remember counting whenever it wanders. And then letting go of that practice, just let that be your contemplative practice for today. So this idea of 20 breaths at the beginning of your day or at the end of your day, either counting both inhale and exhale or simply counting the exhale, which is a lot harder. But you'll notice if you're just counting the exhale, there's a settling that occurs around halfway. There's a settling in your body and in your mind. And if you didn't feel it tonight, that's okay. It may take a little while to practice and get there, but it's very useful. This is a practice that is meant to set you up for meditation. It's actually not meditation, but it is a kind of precursor to meditation. So I would highly recommend doing just simple, remember my Qigong teacher, simple little drips of these practices to bring these healthy habits into your daily life. So thank you for your attention. And I'm always here if you have questions.